Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, Hump Day, as they used to call it, but thankfully nobody calls it that anymore. Um, so let's see. So big historic day today, right? They're inaugurating a new president in the United States. I don't know if anyone is. I don't know if anyone is following that or not, but this is a big deal, right? Because whether you're paying attention or not, the U.S. has a pretty big footprint in global politics, right? They influence a lot of things, and so, it matters who is, um, it matters who sits in that chair, right? It matters who's in that position. So, I guess we'll see how Biden does. In my personal opinion, can't be much worse than what we just went through, but I know, there's obviously varying opinions on that. But it should be an interesting day, news day. I've got the live stream going on my computer here, and maybe if things get interesting, I'll put it on the screen. But so far, nothing's really happened yet. So um, let's let's get rolling. I'm going to say good morning to some people. So Ryan is here. Good morning to you. And Amanpreet is here. So good morning, Amanpreet. Azza's here. Good morning, Azza. Sarah's here. Good morning, Sarah. And Shania is here. Hello, Shania. Good evening to you, if you're still where I think you are. And Simrat is here. Good morning to you. Nicole is here. Good morning, Nicole. And Abby's here. Good morning, Abby. So yesterday, what were we talking about? Oh, yes. We're talking about socialization and how critically important it was, right? Because, of course, human beings need to cooperate and live in a group, and we don't really know, good morning, we don't really know how to do that when we're born. And in fact, we don't know how to do anything at all. Everything has to be taught to us. We need to be enculturated, or we need to be socialized, right? This is an important part of human development and an important part of all of our lives, right? And so I had you read from the textbook the other day. I'm just going to switch that off because it's distracting to me. I had you read from the textbook the other day. We talked about the difference between values and beliefs, right? And of course, we all have personal values and personal beliefs, and those are important. But kind of what we're talking about here is what society thinks is valuable, right? What society thinks is good and bad and right and wrong, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And we're also talking about beliefs, right? Things that society believes to be true, right? Those are important things, right? We said that we encourage people to act according to our cultural rules by rewarding or sanctioning them, right? So people who follow the rules get rewards, and people who don't follow the rules, they get little punishments, right? So when people look good according to societal norms, right? When people look good, they get compliments, right? When people are polite in Canadian society, we reward them usually, right? So if a Canadian, is extra polite and opens the door, then another Canadian might say, "Oh, thank you, sir. Have a nice day," right? And so we give them a little reward for doing that, right? So, and we're all constantly doing this, right? We're all constantly rewarding each other for behavior that is in alignment with societal norms and values, and we're kind of punishing those who don't follow the rules, right? And again, that's a very natural thing to do, and that's kind of what humans do to kind of keep the group peace and to sort of keep everybody cooperating with each other, okay? And we do that kind of thing all the time. Unfortunately, sometimes things can go too far, right, in terms of sanctions. And so, I think we could probably all intuitively think of bullying as a social sanction that goes too far, right? Because often who gets bullied in a school, for instance? Who gets bullied? Kids who... What's that? Nerds, right? Nerdy kids, kids who are kind of a little bit awkward, kids who maybe don't dress stylishly, maybe kids who are, a little bit socially awkward or just a little bit different, right? Those are the kids who get bullied, and I'm definitely not I'm definitely not supporting bullying here. Bullying is wrong and it's bad and it's very destructive. But you can kind of see how this system can get out of hand, right? Because those who don't follow social rules become, you know, in general, they get a little bit of sanction, but sometimes it sort of goes downhill from there and they become targets, right? And so there's kind of a natural basis to this, but again, I think the cruelty is not really desirable, right? We need to, and so it's important to kind of understand how this works, in part, I think, to understand bullying, right? Is where it starts, but then there's other layers to it as well. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. I didn't mean to talk about bullying, but sometimes these things come up. So we also talked about social norms, right? So kind of rules for behavior that we're all encouraged to follow, right? Sometimes they are formal, like laws or rules, but lots of them are informal as well, right? And so yesterday we watched a few, was it yesterday? We watched a few Seinfeld clips yesterday, and we talked about what social norms were being broken, right? So here we had a woman who seemed to be wearing the same dress all the time, right? And it wasn't entirely clear if it was just one dress or if she had like a bunch of these identical dresses in her closet. I don't remember the episode. I don't really know if we find out or not. But either way, Jerry has a reaction, right? She is violating the social norm that we're kind of supposed to wear different clothes every day, at least a little bit, right? Or at least rotate them. But she violates that social rule, right? Mr. Pitt here violates the rule of eating candy bars, right? They're supposed to be eaten with your hands out of the wrapper. They're not supposed to be eaten with a fork and a knife. But of course, in this one, we see that there actually isn't a sanction. People are actually, maybe that's different. Maybe, yeah, they copy it, right? Maybe I'll try that. And so I said that sometimes when social rules get broken, you get sanctions, but other times you get people imitating it, right? Sometimes they might say, oh, that's interesting, right? And that's kind of what celebrities and artists and Instagram influencers or YouTube influencers, that's kind of what they do, right? Is that they try to do something different and get people to copy them, right? So sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes someone violates a social rule and people will copy them. Poppy here, the owner of the restaurant, violates the rule of washing one's hands after they go to the bathroom, right? And so Jerry, of course, has a pretty strong reaction to that. And here, George double dips the chip, right? And so when George double dips the chip, he violates a social norm, right? About one dip, that's it, right? You don't keep dipping the chip. And so Timmy attempts to correct him and get him to follow the rule, and it ends in a bit of a scuffle, right? So what I wanted to point out to you here is that, yes, we've all absorbed and learned these norms, and in a lot of cases, we've absorbed these kind of ideas without really being taught directly, right? People haven't told us a lot of things. We've just kind of learned them, right? We're constantly around people. We're constantly watching people and seeing how they behave and trying to fit our behavior into what everyone else is doing. And so we just kind of absorb social messages about how to behave and what the world is about and what people are like, right? So a lot of what we learned, we didn't really learn consciously, right? We learn it unconsciously. And so these are kind of what I'll call implicit messages, right? These messages that kind of get absorbed into your subconscious and you didn't really even know that you learned them, okay? And the metaphor I like to use here, because I was using the computer analogy before and the operating system analogy, is that in a way they're kind of like computer viruses, except like computer viruses you don't want, right? You don't want viruses in your computer. But social messaging is often like a virus in that it gets downloaded into your operating system. You don't know where it came from, right? Viruses often, you don't know where they come from. You don't know what they're doing in your computer. They're operating in the background doing something, right? And so similarly, social messages are like that too. You download them just by being in society. You don't really know where they come from. Good morning. You don't know where they come from. you kind of don't know what they are, and they just kind of sit in your subconscious and sometimes influence your thoughts or behavior without you really knowing. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, because understanding that will be important in going forward. Right, and so because of those messages we absorb, we kind of see the world through these messages and through our socialization, right? Just like the lens in our glasses. We see and interpret things based on what we already know and believe. Okay? So, whoops. Yesterday, I said, okay, are you socialized? And hopefully you all will nod your heads at this point because I've told you that it is basically impossible to not be socialized, right? If you grow up in a reasonably normal family, in a reasonably normal society, you have been socialized. And so let's do a little exercise, let's do a little experiment and see what happens here. So I'm going to show you some people, and I'm going to ask you these questions, okay? And so what I'm going to do here, just for online people, let me just find the right slide here. There it is. So just for online people, just to make it a little bit easier, I'm just going to post these questions in Microsoft Teams in the chat, just so we, just so that you have a bit of a record, okay? So what I'm going to ask you, I'm going to show you some pictures of people, and I'm going to ask you these questions. I'm going to ask you, who's the smartest? Okay, who's the smartest person here? Who's the wealthiest? Who's the most religious? Who reads a lot? Okay, who's careful with money? Who is a stay-at-home parent? Who's most likely to feel included and a part of the society they live in? Who is most likely to feel isolated? Who's most likely to be put in charge? Who's most likely to be chosen as the boss? And who's most likely to travel freely anywhere in the world? Okay? Now, what I want you to do when I show you these pictures is just kind of use your intuition, okay? Go with your gut kind of thing, okay? All right. So I'll ask you these questions here, but let me show you our people, okay? Here we go. There we go. The gentleman in the circle is not part of this experiment, just so you know. He's the narrator. He's what? Yeah. He doesn't count. He does not count. Okay, I'm going to give you just a few, maybe a minute or so, just to look at these individuals, and then we will, talk about, who's who. Mm-hmm. 10 more seconds. Couple more seconds. All right. So here we go. 14 people. The first question I wanted to ask you was, who's the smartest? And online people, you can chime in the live chat here, and we'll take your comments as well. So who's the smartest person here, would you say? And why do you think so? Number 10? Okay. Who else? What other numbers? 7? 10, 7? 9. Ryan says number 8. Who? 14? Okay. Okay, let's go to Daniel. Daniel, you said 10, right? Okay, so why did you say 10? Why did you pick this young man as the smartest person? He's what? He looks? Oh, okay. Oh, he looks like a nerd. Number 10? Okay. He looks nerdy, whatever that is, right? Whatever we think that is. Okay. Nicholas, you said 7, right? Why did you say 7? I guess they could be. It looks to me like she's outside. Good morning. Looks like she's outside, but.
It looks like she's at a fair or a carnival of some sort.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is what it looks like to me. But if she were surrounded by books, that might be a clue. And what did you say? Number 1. Yeah. So why do you say number 1 then? She looks what? Ah, okay. Okay, hang on. So she looks like an accomplished person. What makes her look accomplished? She's kind of stylish suit or stylish coat, right? Okay. What else do we think? Mulder, what did you say? You said number 1 too? For the same reason or different ones? Right. So we made a connection between maybe smartness and confidence, and she looks like she knows something, right? She's like, yeah, I know. She's got that kind of facial expression, right? Adal, you said 14. Why do you say 14? Oh, his his pose, right? He's like, yes, I'm a smart person thinking smart thoughts right now, right?
So, can I choose more than one?
Sure, absolutely.
I believe it's 9 and 6.
No,
I can't
not.
say the opposite because it's a bad number.
Oh, you can't say what?
I can't say the opposite.
Oh, okay. Of.
9 and 6.
Okay. Oh, okay. I gotcha. So 9. Why do you say 9?
Actually, I want to say like all in the comments. I don't want to. I don't want to make differences between those two.
Okay.
Since I believe that the older you get, the more experience you have,
Sure.
and therefore makes you a lot smarter than the younger ones because you have experience your entire life.
Sure. So both of these people are on the older part of the spectrum, right? They're probably, yeah, I think they're clearly the oldest people in our little panel here, right? And yeah, I guess the idea is as you age, you gain more knowledge, more wisdom. So those people might be the smartest people here. Sure. What's that?
Being wise is different than being smart, right?
That is true. That is true. And again, I guess it depends on how we think about smartness, right? Is it knowledge? Is it wiseness? Is it just like brain horsepower, right? What are we talking about, right? What about number 2 here? I'll ask you, who's the wealthiest, would you say? Who's the wealthiest person here?
14.
Number 14, okay. What? Oh, sorry. I just wanted to go to before we get to the wealthiest one. So Ryan says number 8 for intelligence because he looks nerdy, right? So we have this idea about nerdiness, right? Nerds are smart, or at least not all the time maybe, but sometimes there's that association. So number 8 looks a little nerdy, and so we're going to assume that maybe he's the smartest one. That's reasonable. Aza says number 4 because she looks like she would be a model. And indeed, she is actually a model. Do you know what her name is? I think it's like Winnie Harlow or something. What's that?
That's not her.
That's not Winnie? Oh, that's somebody else? Okay. I'm thinking of a similar looking model, I guess. Okay, I don't know who she is then. but I think she probably is a model, right? Yeah. So okay, let's go to the wealth. Oh, maybe this is the wealthiest. Maybe Aza's going on the wealthiest one here. So sorry. So okay. So who said 14? Oh yes. So why is 14 the wealthiest? Would you say?
He's also model.
Okay. He looks like a model, or he is a model. He looks like a model? Okay. The other thing I should point out here is these pictures were chosen, and I don't know who any of these people are. Okay? So there's no, if somebody is like a celebrity or something like that, I have no idea. Okay, so I do not know who these people are. They're just random people, as far as I know. So 14, he looks like a model. Yeah, he's a handsome guy. He looks like he might be in the middle of a photo shoot here, and yeah, we have this idea that models make money, right? So he might be the wealthiest. Who else? Aza says maybe number 4 because she looks like a model. If that's the question you're answering, Aza, and Ryan kind of says the same thing, 4 because it looks like a model, I think. What else? Who else might be the wealthiest here? Do you think? 14? Why 14? He looks like a businessman. Okay. What else do you think? 5? Why 5? Okay, he looks like he might be a celebrity type, right? And so we know celebrities make the cash. So okay. Anyone else? Wealthiest person here? Definitely not the guy in the circle, I can tell you that. What's the third question I asked you here? Who's the most religious, do you think? 12, of course. Okay. Why do you say 12? What's that? It's obvious. Yeah, but why is it obvious? That's okay. It's what were you saying, Nasra?
That's cultural, not religious.
Right, and so sometimes, and this is true of anyone looking at another culture, again, if we don't understand kind of the symbolism and the ideas that are sort of circulating in that culture, it's very easy not to interpret things correctly or to misunderstand, right? So this woman here in number 12, she's clearly wearing a lot of jewelry, and she's wearing this kind of fancy necklace, and she's got makeup, and she's very done up, right? But of course, if we don't belong to the culture she belongs to, we don't really understand the significance of it, right? And so sometimes it's very easy, and everybody falls prey to this. Scientists fall prey to this. They assume things to be religious when in fact they are not. There's actually a very funny article written by a sociologist, I think, and the sociologist pretends they're analyzing a culture, and it's American culture, but they describe it in such a way that it almost seems like everything that Americans are doing have religious significance, but really it's not true. They're just going about their daily lives. But because the sociologist is pretending not to understand, they assume that everything is religious, right? And so it's kind of a funny article, and it's very interesting, but lots of people do that. But so, yeah, we might misinterpret this woman as being more religious because she's very made up, right? There's lots of jewelry and makeup and things going on, and we don't understand whether, she's taking part in a religious ritual or, if she's just looking beautiful on a Tuesday, right? We don't really know that, and I don't really know that, right? But do you know for sure, Nasra?
That is culture?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So it's just she's just looking good, right? Who else do you think might be the most religious here?
10 and 11.
10 and 11. Okay. Why do you say 10 and 11?
I don't know, because they're kids, they don't know any better, so they told them that.
They've been indoctrinated into their religion. That's possible, right? Kids don't really make religious choices for themselves, right? They are taught they're taught from their parents, and so if they have religious parents, they too may be religious. It's reasonable. Let's see here. So Aza says number 14 maybe, because he's very closely associated with his culture, right? And I assume his head covering has something to do with that observation, I assume. Ryan says 12 because she's wearing her cultural or religious clothes, right? Yeah, and so we may not understand the meaning of it, and sometimes ritual things are very ornate, right? Whatever culture you belong to, when there's a ritual to be done, you kind of either wear fancy clothes or you wear things that you wouldn't normally wear, right? So again, it's a reasonable assumption to make. Amanpreet says 12 and 14 because they're wearing religious or cultural wear, right? So there's also an association between items of clothing that have cultural significance and attaching them to having religious significance as well. And again, that's not an unreasonable assumption either, right? People wear turbans, for instance, for cultural but also religious reasons, right? And so that's not an unreasonable assumption to make. Who do you think reads a lot? Who's a reader here? Not here, but there. So Aza says, yeah, person number one is interesting, right? She's very kind of enigmatic looking. She looks like she knows something that you don't. And so it's very easy to kind of like, I think, project things onto her. But Aza says, yeah, she looks like she could be a writer, right? So she looks like something's going on with her. Let's see, what else do you think here? Who reads books here?
They could all read books though.
Of course. But who's an avid reader? Who reads a lot? Abby says maybe 7. She looks like she's read many books. Yeah, which is interesting, but how do we know that? What does a person who's read many books look like? Ryan says maybe 6 because he's older. Okay, so someone who's older will have had time to read more books, right? But maybe he's also retired, right? If he's retired, he's got a lot of time on his hands. Maybe he likes to read. My dad's retired and he likes to read, so that's reasonable.
I think we can judge people because maybe 2 is.
That's okay. I'm just go with your gut here. Just go with your gut. See what you think. Trust me. Okay, maybe that's a tough one. Who's careful with money? 2 is careful with money?
2 or 9.
2 or 9. Okay, why is 2 careful with money?
2 obviously like you don't have even a shelter for living. So if, for example, if he had $3 in his whole life, he had $3.
Yeah. So that's a reasonable assumption to make, right? This person, number 2, appears to be homeless, right? He is sleeping on the street. And so if you are sleeping on the street, you probably don't have any money or you have very, very little. And if you do have very little, maybe you're going to be careful with it, right? If you have $3 in the entire world, you're going to be very careful with that $3, right? It's reasonable. And Cheyenne, you said 9 too? Why 9?
9 looks like old farmer or like looks to me, but I believe this person or like number 11 also, most of them are, I believe they come from low income countries. They generally overage.
Yeah.
Have a low income.
Yeah.
For the high end families.
Yeah, so we're kind of looking at this woman. She's an older woman, right? We might assume, well, it's kind of green in the background there, right? So we can almost picture her as like maybe like a peasant farmer, right? Like somebody living, maybe way out of the city in China, for instance, and maybe she works in a little farming village. And yeah, maybe she doesn't have very much money, so she's very careful with any sort of money she has. right? We don't know for sure, but I think it's pretty easy to imagine that kind of backstory for her, is it not?
I would imagine her like she farms her own stuff, like she likes it, like to be convenient.
Yeah.
So she's cautious with money just because she doesn't like spending it because she has her own. Not that she's poor, but
Yeah.
she's self-sufficient.
Exactly. Do you think we have, what kind of feelings do we have about being careful with money? Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It depends.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing? It's a bad thing? Why?
It depends.
Yeah, but tell me why it depends. There are no wrong answers here.
Because when you're homeless, you should be careful with your money.
Yes.
You don't have lots of money. But
Right.
if you are very rich, you're wealthy, you can spend the money, you can enjoy it.
Right. So there's almost another kind of layer to this as well, right? Is that, yeah, being careful with money is good, right? Being responsible with your money is good. But especially if you are like number 2 and you don't really have any. However, there's the idea that, well, if you have to be so careful with your money, clearly you don't have very much, right? And again, we tend to praise or give importance to people with wealth. And if you have wealth, then you don't really have to be that careful, right? You can throw money around and it's not that big a deal, right? So we can kind of look at it both ways. It's like, yeah, it's good to be careful with your money, but if you have to be that careful, clearly you don't have very much, and not having very much is not good, according to society. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's interesting how there's a few cultural values that are attached to this, and they're almost a little bit in conflict, right? Good to be careful with your money, but if you have to be too careful, that means you don't have very much, and not having very much is not good, right? So there's kind of two cultural values here. That was good. Let's see. Right, so Ryan says number 2 because he looks homeless, and again, that's a reasonable assumption to make. Number 9, she seems too old to work. Yeah, okay, so she could be retired, right? She could be a grandmother, and so, people who are retired have to be a little more careful with their money, right? They're living on savings, or maybe they're lucky enough to have a government pension or something. You have a fixed income, right? So you have to be a little more careful with how you spend your money. You can't just make more. Could we also say that, well, hang on. Let me look at my questions here. Could we also say that number 2 might be the least careful with money? Maybe that's why they're homeless in the first place, right? Maybe they spent all their money and went bankrupt and now they have no home, right? That's not funny, but it could, but it's not, but it could be the opposite. But it could be the opposite, right? It could be that they're very not careful with their money, and that's why they're there, right? So it could be the opposite.
But after that, then they will always be
Guys, plan for haste.
But then they might be careful after that, right? So could be both. There's 2 ways of looking at it, is all I'm saying. Who's most likely to be a stay-at-home parent? So maybe they have a partner or a spouse that goes off to work and kind of makes the money, and this person stays home and looks after the children. Who's that most likely to be, would you say?
7.
7? Okay, why you say 7?
Because obviously, if boy like taking picture from her, or
Sure.
so like she could be like studying or working, but it's obvious that she has a partner. Also for number 6, maybe that grandparents live with his own like children, grandchildren.
Okay. So both of these people could be, we can imagine them in the role of caring for a child, right? So it's very possible that number 7 here has children. Maybe her spouse or her partner is taking a picture of her. She looks very happy in that picture, so maybe she's smiling for her partner, which is often what people do, right? You take pictures of your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband and wife, and they're smiling in the picture. Number 6, we could also, as a grandparent, grandparents often take care of their grandchildren, right? So we could easily see them as a caregiver as well. Who else do you think? Oh, Aza says, Aza says the same thing, number 6, right? So he could be retired and he could stay at home and help look after the grandchildren, right? That's very, very possible. So here Ryan says number 12, right? So we might be able to picture her staying home and looking after children in her culture, right? And again, we don't really have a lot of background about her, but we can kind of make an assumption that, maybe she doesn't have, a career in an office building sort of thing. Maybe she's living in sort of a rural setting. And so, maybe she stays at home and looks after the kids. Maybe. It's an assumption, but it's one that we might make. Sarah says number 8, because he doesn't have a job, so he depends on his family. Okay. 8's nerdy and also doesn't have a job. But I guess that could happen. Poor number 8. Who else might be a stay-at-home parent here?
Except children, I wouldn't mind that number 9 could be like related to his family.
Sure. Yeah, so number 9 could be the same situation, right? She could be a grandparent looking after her grandkids. That's possible. Who's most likely to feel included in society? Who's most likely to feel like they belong? Aza says number 7. I'm curious to know why, but what do you think? Who feels like they belong? Huh? Who feels like they belong in society? Who feels like they're at home and they're kind of like a part of their community, a part of their country? Who feels like included? What's that? All of them?
All of them but number 2.
Okay, so why not number 2?
Because I'm pretty sure like people give her weird stuff, him or her. And you're on the street, like obviously you don't belong.
So there's kind of there's a class division there, right? And so this person, as someone who doesn't have maybe a job, doesn't have a home, doesn't have any money, is on the outside, right? They're excluded. And that's a reasonable assumption to make, right? Because kind of existing and sort of operating within our society, you need money, right? You need money to have a house and buy clothes and buy a coffee and go out and do things that people do on weekends and things like that. To kind of participate in society, you need some amount of money. You don't have to be necessarily a rich person, but you do need something, right? And so this person doesn't really have anything, and so maybe they're on the outside, right? Maybe they can't participate in the way that most of us can. Ryan says number 11. She looks like she's having the best day of their life. Yeah, maybe. Oh wait, he does. He does look like he's having the best day, right? So he's a kid, and sometimes kids' emotions are big. But yeah, he looks like he's super happy, right? It's like, yeah, that's good, right? He looks happy. He looks like he's part of the group. Anything else? Who else do you think feels most included? Yeah, she's a little girl. Why do you say that? Okay, so I guess her world is much smaller, right, than maybe all of us. She's not aware of society, right? She's just kind of aware of her immediate family, and she's probably taken care of and loved by that family. So she does feel very at home, right? So that's a reasonable assumption as well. FYI, they're just swearing in Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States. First woman Vice President, first black woman, first woman of South Asian descent. Sworn in, Vice President of the United States. She's got her hand up. She's doing the whole thing. That's cool. Let's see. What, oh, okay. So kind of the opposite question here. Who do you think is most likely to feel isolated? Who's most likely to feel alone, separate? Huh? Number two, right, for probably the same thing that we just talked about, right? They don't have any money, and not having any money, people kind of look down on you, and you can't participate in the things that most of us can't. Now, what else do you think?
I believe number 4 and number 1 could have a hard life before they like immigrants.
Okay, 4 and 10?
4 and 1.
4 and 1. Okay, so 4. Why do you feel 4 might feel isolated or excluded?
She kind of looks like she's been through much, like if you can see, like they fighted for it. She's right.
Well, she's different looking, right? She has what do we call it? There's kind of like differential melanin production in her skin, and so she has different skin tones. What is it called?
I think it starts with an M though. Something.
I thought it started with a V.
V?
Vitiligo or something like that.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So she has a skin condition called vitiligo, and so she has differential melanin production, and so that's, yeah. So he claimed. I think he was bleaching his skin. I don't think it was that, but he claimed. There's a claim, right? What's that?
She's mother when she burned, washed it with bleach.
Yeah. Yikes! That scares me.
She has a metaphor for that.
The bleaching stuff scares me. But for her, this is her natural appearance, right? But she looks different, right? Most of us are mostly one color or another, and our colors vary, of course, but we're mostly one color. But she's kind of a bunch of different colors, right? And so 10 is like, yeah, he's got freckles, right? So it's possible that people might have looked at these people differently. Maybe she was, maybe these two were teased or bullied when they were younger because they looked different. So it's possible that at one point they did feel very isolated, right? I would say particularly number 4. Of course, now, she's a model and maybe she feels differently, but when she was young, I think we could very easily imagine that she was, people made comments about her because she looks different, right? Not all of us
But
look
number
like that.
10 is still young, so I don't think he felt that. I think he took power in the fact that he looks different.
True, that's very true. And he's, freckles aren't really
Yeah.
that strange, or at least not in this part of the world. So maybe not. He's kind of got red hair too. Sometimes kids with red hair get picked on. I don't know why, but he's a ginger what? Because they have no soul. I know that's one of the mean things that gets said, but it's true. That's what they get teased about sometimes. Let me see. Yeah, maybe Abby says, yeah, number 4. Maybe people, there we go, yeah. So that's very possible. Definitely number 2, that's a reasonable assumption. Who's why number 8?
Because like nerdy people like always have a different path than others in their society.
But what makes him? Why do you think he's nerdy?
He looks like
He looks like a nerd. Well, and this is very interesting, right? What makes him look nerdy? And you and Cheyenne, you're like, well, he looks like a nerd, right? And so, but what does a nerd look like? And what's that? Like that. So what does he look like? He looks a little bit. Does he look confident? He looks a little sad, doesn't he? He's kind of like, he looks a little slumped, right? He's like kind of like, he doesn't look happy. He doesn't look confident. He looks kind of maybe a little bit lonely, maybe.
no passion for life.
He maybe has no passion for life. or at least he has no passion for having his picture taken. We don't we don't really know. But yeah, and again, this is good because this is a perfect question, right? You're like, yeah, he looks like a nerd, and I would kind of agree with you. And I've done this exercise with a bunch of different social justice classes, and yeah, that's the common consensus. This guy looks like a nerd, right? So, which is okay. It's fine to say that, but the other question is, what does a nerd look like, right? Why do we look at this guy and make assumptions about him? And again, I'm not criticizing that process. I'm just asking the question, right? What makes us think that one person is one way and one person is another? That's what we're doing here. Who's most likely to be put in charge? Yeah, who's most likely to be made the boss? Who's most likely to be the head of a company or the boss at work or whatever? Okay, so Azza says number 12, because she looks very confident and good at handling everything. She does look pretty badass, doesn't she? Yeah. Yeah, she's very like, what's that look? Like determined or, yeah.
She knows.
She means business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that woman means business. She knows stuff, right? So I could see that. I could agree with that. Who else? 13. Why 13? He does look serious. Yeah, there's a seriousness about him. There's a determination about him. What else?
Number 1, number 5 have the potential. Number 40, obviously, is already the boss of a modeling company or something.
Okay, so hang on. So why number 1 and number 5?
Because they looks like how I say, normal role in the people, like the most common role in the people, looks like them. So they have like the most potential than other ones.
Okay. So they are, they look like you would expect leaders to look. Okay, that's good. And 14, why'd you say 14?
Like always, this looks for this from the picture, I get an energy or feeling that says like this person owns something, have something.
He has something. What makes you think that?
His way of looking, he's confident in himself.
Right.
Looking.
Right, he looks very confident, and he's very kind of like, he's dressed nice, right? He's very put together. His beard is kind of perfectly trimmed, and he looks very, very put together, right? So Abby says, where's my cursor here? There it is. Abby says number 4 or number 1. Both of them look accomplished. Right, so interesting that we are talking about leaders who, you know, we expect certain things of our leaders, right? We expect leaders to be confident. We expect them to be, you know, determined looking. We expect them to look successful, right, in some way. And all of those people, I think, do. Okay. Right. Last question, who's most likely to be able to travel freely anywhere in the world?
7.
Number 7?
Yes.
Why 7?
She looks like a YouTuber, blogger, or something like that.
Okay, she looks like someone who would travel and have some sort of travel blog or vlog or YouTube channel, right, or some such thing, right? Okay, that's fair. Who else would be able to travel? What?
Number 5.
Number 5? Why 5?
He's a white male.
Because what?
He's a white male.
Because he's a white male.
Actually, I think it's number 5 too, because from what I've seen, I don't know if I'm true or not, but the black background makes it feel like he's more like a famous person.
Ah, okay. Which is kind of what Azza was saying too, right? Is that he looks like Maybe he's some sort of a famous person. Maybe he's a musician. So maybe he travels the world touring, right, as a celebrity might, right? But it's also worth saying that, yeah, his ethnicity is worth considering here, right? And would, you know, he's a white person. He's a man. He would probably travel freely anywhere in the world. His passport, maybe it's American or Canadian, and so he can go to a lot of countries without a visa. He can probably walk around lots of different countries and not get hassled, which is not true for women in all countries, right? If they're on their own. Who do you think would be least likely to travel freely? 3, 10, and 11. Okay, so I'm guessing because they're children. Okay, but those ones aside, who would be less? Who would find it much more difficult to travel freely? 2. Okay, no money. I'm guessing. 9. Why 9? Okay, so she's an older person, right? She may not feel comfortable traveling by herself. It might be a lot of physical exertion, and that might not, you know, she might not be able to do that. She might not have a lot of experience traveling. Amanpreet says number 2 as well. So yeah, no money does not allow you to do that. Let me see. Okay, so a lot of what we heard is quite similar to what other classes have said about these people. Definitely person number 1, we get a feeling of kind of accomplishment and confidence from her, and sometimes we attach that to various things, whether she's a writer or a reader or somebody who's in charge of a company. Number 2, we picture this person as a homeless person, and so maybe they don't have any money, they're not careful with money, and they might feel a bit on the outside of society. The kids here, number 3, number 10, and number 11, yeah, we see them as kids, and you know they're happy and they might feel included. Number 4, pretty much everyone sees this woman as a model because I think she is, and so we tend to associate sometimes confidence or wealth or travel with her as well, right? Models travel all over the world and do photo shoots in exotic places, and so she could be that too. We often see 5, I think, again, as maybe a celebrity or a model, but a white man, right? And so his whiteness is part of his identity and will influence what he's able to do. Number 6, yeah, he's an older guy, and so sometimes people see him as a boss. Some people have pointed out, well, he looks like he's shouting an order at someone. He looks like he's telling someone what to do. Hurry up and get that done, or whatever, right? What's that? Maybe he does look a little grouchy, right? Sometimes bosses are grouchy. Exactly. Or yeah, and we also said he was a grandfather maybe as well, right? Number 7, we saw her as kind of this young person, maybe someone who likes to travel. Some people thought she was very well read. You can't really see, but I think one of her earrings is a cross, a crucifix. And so she might be, when we talked about the most religious, she actually might be the most religious because she's the only person who I think we have clear evidence of her religious background. So it might actually be her. Of course, I don't know. I don't know who any of these people are. Number 8, in a lot of cases, we've seen him as a kind of a nerdy guy, as a little bit maybe awkward or not confident, and so he might feel isolated, he might feel excluded. But some people associated him with the smartest person too, because we have an association of, yes, nerds are socially awkward, but sometimes they're also super smart, right? And so some people had chosen number 8 as well. Number 9, we have this sort of older woman. Sometimes she's chosen as the wisest person. Sometimes she's chosen as the most careful with money, as we've talked about. We have these 2 cute kids here, 10 and 11. All the kids are cute, of course. Number 12, yeah, sometimes she gets picked for the most religious person because of her very ornate jewelry and makeup. Um, I think she's been picked as the leader a couple times as well because of her. She, as I say, she looks like a boss, right? Number 13 is sometimes picked as the leader because of his, determined expression. Sometimes so because of his. You can't quite see it here because my 13 is in the way, but he's got either a tattoo or a marker on his arm, and it says something to the degree like I love Syria, or Syria is my heart, or something like that. That's what it says on his arm. So he's in Syria expressing his love for his country. And number 14, sometimes 14 gets picked as the wealthiest one because we look at him and we think, oh, he looks like he's from a Middle Eastern country or Saudi Arabia or UAE or something. There's lots of oil there. There's lots of money. And so this guy looks like he has money too. So sometimes students have picked him that way as well. Any last comments about these 14 people? Do you want to take a little break?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a 10-minute break, come back, and we'll talk about what the heck we just did here. Okay? Okay, and we're back. So sorry, online people, we were a little bit late. We were just watching Joe Biden give his inaugural address, his speech to the American people, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. Sorry, I'm just going to put this back on the screen here. There. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting, right? Because one of the things I was thinking, Daniel, you said, why is he so sad? But, there's a certain, he's speaking to a certain audience, and so he has to appear a certain way, right? And so I'm sure he's very happy to have been elected, right? But what does the country need right now? What does the leader need to communicate to the people of the United States? Right? What's he trying to? What feelings is he trying to project? Confidence. What else? Patriotism. Yeah, patriotism. I heard hope, right? Like I heard, he's like, let's do this, right? Like we have a big job to do. We're in crisis here. Let's do this, people. Like, come on. We can do it. We're America, right? We can do anything. That's kind of what I heard. And so that's, and probably that's the message that the nation needs to hear. And so, when we were talking about critical thinking the other day, another part of critical thinking is considering audience, right? And so whenever someone is saying something, they're always saying it to an audience, right? Even if you're just at home writing in your diary or whatever, or you're writing a little note to yourself, the audience is you, right? But things are always being said to someone, right? And it matters whether Joe Biden is kind of saying it to himself in his personal diary, or whether he's saying it to his wife over the dinner table, or whether he's standing in front of a microphone and speaking to the nation, right? That people will say and communicate different things depending on who the audience is. And so, he's communicating what, he feels, but he's also communicating what he feels that the nation needs to hear, right? And I think he's right. I think that's what the nation does need to hear, is a message of hope and encouragement and patriotism. And we're going to do this, right? We're going to get through this together, but also, I need your help, right? I'm going to do everything I can, but we need to do this together, right? And so, I think that's what people need to hear. And again, that's part of the job of a leader, right? Is to tell people, not tell people what they want to hear, but tell people what they really need to hear. And I think he did that. I guess we'll see how I'm just glad he didn't get assassinated, to be honest. That's what I was, he wouldn't be the first American president to be assassinated, and he wouldn't be the first one to be shot. So I'm glad that he made it through without either of those things happening, even though I didn't think they would. But the Capitol was stormed just last week, so who knows what can happen now, right? Yeah, that was good. That was encouraging for me anyway. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay. So we did this exercise with 14 people, and I asked you questions about who are these people, right? Or who's the best reader, who's the wealthiest, who's the most careful with money, who's the smartest, who's likely to be the boss. All these questions that you couldn't possibly have known the answers to. How unfair, right? What kind of teacher am I, asking questions that you don't have the answer to? Well, why do we do this then? Well, again, I wanted to kind of demonstrate the idea that we've all internalized social messages about people, right? We all kind of make judgments about people, and again, this is kind of a natural part of society and a part of socialization, right? It's a lot easier for us to move through the world and figure people out if we can make some generalizations about people, right? We kind of know what old people are like, right? Right? Yeah, we kind of know what old people are like. We kind of know what kids are like, right? We know what nerds are like, right? We know what models are like. We know what celebrities are like. We know, that certain countries, certain parts of the world have lots of oil and lots of money, and we know what that's like. We kind of imagine we know what it's like to have no money and no home, right? So, and I'm not saying that what we know, quote unquote, I'm not saying what we know is necessarily accurate or correct or right, Cheyenne? Yeah. So I'm not saying that those things are correct, but we do know those things, right? And we know them because we've been socialized, right? We have ideas about what people are like. And so if you hadn't been socialized, Daniel, if you hadn't been socialized, or if you didn't absorb these social messages, that exercise would have been impossible, right? You would have looked at it and you would have said, I can't do it. I don't know anything about these people. I just see faces, right? But we do have associations that we make about people based on their income, about where they come from in the world, about their gender, about their maybe sexuality, about the way they project themselves to the world, about their age. We kind of have ideas about people based on those things, and we kind of judge people like that. And again, there's an extreme version of judgment that we'll get to later, but the sort of more reasonable version is something that we all do, right? We kind of make little judgments about each other. If you're walking down the street late at night and you see someone walking toward you, you make some quick judgments about them, right? Are they cool, right? Is this person a danger to me or not? Should I cross the street and go the other way? Or, do I feel safe walking by them, right? We do these kind of things all the time, and our brain does them very, very automatically, right? They're not connected to our sort of logical thought process. They're connected to a process that's very good at making quick snap judgments all the time, right? And it's the same. You're shaking your head, no?
I don't judge as quick as you say. So I don't know if there's something wrong with me.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Well, I don't know. I would invite you, and I'm not contradicting what you're saying, but I would invite you to try to pay a little more attention to what your brain is doing, because sometimes those things happen very quickly without your knowledge. And so maybe you don't, and if you don't, that's phenomenal. But again, brains are very quick at kind of making these distinctions. And so see if you can just pay attention to your thought process. Don't try to interrupt it, but just see if those things are happening. And obviously you can override them, right? You can look at someone and then say, oh no, that's, I jumped too quickly to judgment. That's not who this person is. But often, we do have a system in our brain that is kind of always on and always kind of assessing our environment and making judgments for us, right? It's happening all the time. And so, again, I'm not contradicting you, but pay attention and see if your brain is trying to do these sorts of things.
I believe, if I may say,
You may.
that's like a defensive protocol of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Judgment is something else. Like, you can be defensive about the all environment around you. You can be defensive against all the emotions that come toward you, all the thoughts, all the people you see.
Right.
But judgment means what attitude you should have against the other person that had it with you.
Right. So maybe I'll rephrase just a little bit because maybe I'm communicating the wrong thing. So what I'm trying to say when we make a judgment is just when we try to figure people out, right? And we figure people out by how they look, how they carry themselves, the clothing they wear. And so I think when I was saying judgment, I think you may have interpreted like judging as in good or bad, right or wrong. Maybe no? But what I was saying is, we made judgments about these people because we kind of tried to figure them out based on the information that we had, right? Which was admittedly very little. But we were able to make some judgments, and I'm not saying like good, bad judgments. I just mean we were able to try to figure them out. And I think that we naturally do that. We just try to figure other people out, right? Are they cool? Are they not cool? Do they, is that someone I might like to approach? Should I be worried about this person? when I get on the bus, who am I going to sit next to? Who looks who looks cool and who looks like someone I might not want to sit next to? We all kind of do that, and so I think anyway. Maybe we don't, but many of us do that. And again, it's an automatic process, and it's based on the things that we absorb and that we know, right? And I think it's a normal part of how humans operate, right? Cheyenne.
I agree with some of your words, like it's an automatically, I agree, yes. As I said, it's a defensive protocol. But when I said, for example, number 4 going through so much, number 6 had blah, 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 number 14, I explained for you what I saw, what I feel,
Sure.
what they give to me, what
Yeah.
they shared.
Yep.
But when I say like judgment, that means my attitude with this person. At the future, if I see this person, that person is gonna decrease my life level or upgrade it to another level. There's only 2 choices.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
So if my attitude is gonna like affect this person like to this way of decrease or upgrade, so I prefer go somewhere in the middle.
Right.
I don't like even like I let the person show himself first. Like for example, give me more information from time to time. If I like want to push that person toward myself, toward going to the level of like life level, life situation,
Right.
everything, I may. It's more likely I get upside down results.
Sure. Yeah, and so, and that makes sense. And really what I'm kind of referring to here is, our assessment of people before they kind of come into our sphere, right? Before we kind of get to know them. Because then that's a different thing, right? Then you're taking in all kinds of different information, you're hearing what they say, you're kind of getting to know the person, and that's kind of a different thing, right? So I'm just trying to make a point about how we might assess people that we don't know and haven't met and don't have complete information about, right? And again, when someone starts talking to you or when you start talking to someone else, then that's a different story, right? You're getting all kinds of other information and you can build maybe a more accurate picture of who this person is. And again, do you want to involve yourself with them? Do you want to have them in your circle, or do you want to keep them out, right? And so that's kind of another phase. And again, I'm not trying to sort of communicate that this is a situation where you're judging people as good or bad. I'm just saying you try to figure out who people are, right? And often we do, right? And again, we try to figure people out based on what we already know about people, right? And sometimes we use ideas that we have absorbed from society. That's kind of that's where I'm trying to land with this.
I read this article, and I don't know what of it. I forgot about the article, but anyway, it said really stuck with me this one line, and literally take it forward in my life. He said that the first thought that you have, like when I look at you and I think the first thought I have is how I was raised and how I was taught. But the second thought that comes right after that is how I feel according to what I've seen. So it's like, obviously, a man in a dress, that's so weird, but like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
The first time I see a man in a dress, I'm like, oh, that's weird. But I'm like, oh, wait, he kind of looks cute. So that's what you go off on.
Absolutely. And it's not to say that, and that first impression is kind of what I'm talking about here. And obviously you can override it, right? You can, even if you aren't being judgmental, have you ever been wrong about someone? Have you ever thought, oh, this person is this way or that way, and then you kind of get to know them better and you're like, oh, I was totally wrong, right? That happens to me all the time. But yeah, it's that first reaction that I'm talking about. And again, you can override that, right? You might meet someone the first time very quickly and you're like, oh, what a jerk, right? And then, you get to know them a little more and you're like, oh, okay, I get this person now. I get that they're not a jerk. They just have a weird sense of humor, or they're just very direct or something. And you get to know them a little bit better and you understand, right? But at first, your first reaction might be different. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, is not, you know, not the sort of building that you do later, but that first impression, right? And again, it happens very quickly, right? Oh, okay. I want to read about this. We're going to, where are we, Wednesday? Maybe later this week or early next week, I have a movie to show you. But that movie, watching that movie requires us to know a few, pardon me, excuse me, a few more things about socialization for the movie to kind of really make sense and for us to get what we need from it, okay? So, what's that?
The Gears movie.
The what movie?
The Gears.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Can I bring popcorn?
Yeah, of course. Just don't make a mess, but you can bring it. I'll let you know. But first, we need to do just a little bit of reading from the textbook, okay? So I've got 3 pages for you to read. It's in Microsoft Teams as it was before. And I want you to answer these 3 questions. What is peer group socialization? And I think this is your opinion here. Do you think it's more powerful than family socialization? What are social institutions and how do they help socialize people? And do you think your schooling in the past has had a hidden curriculum? Ooh. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, and why? Okay? So just 3 pages, have a read, and then we will discuss. And again, I think my page numbers are the PDF page, but I'm just going to double check that.
Seriously, where? Can't find the text.
The textbook is in Microsoft Teams, and at the top it'll say Files, and if you click Files, you'll see a file folder that says Textbook. And there it is. Okay, let's do some reading about socialization. Oh good, Joe Biden's still alive. Okay. All right. Whew. Sorry, I probably shouldn't be so worried about that, but good Lord. Okay, let's read. Okay, good people. So we're just about out of time here, and so we'll just have to pick up the reading and the questions tomorrow. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. I'll see you tomorrow, and God bless America.
20 minutes.
Or I'll see you in 20 minutes. No, I'm not. I'm very, very strongly Canadian, but but I do recognize the importance of a stable United States in the world system and also for Canada. Bye, everyone.